Hi everyone, so today we're going to go ahead and look at graphing cosine functions. So with our cosine function, again, you're going to look at how to find the cosine of each of these angles just to kind of start you off. So if we find the cosine of 0, that's at 1. Again, you're using what you know about your unit circle to help you to figure out these angles. The cosine of pi over 2 is 0. The cosine of pi is -1. The cosine of 3 pi over 2 is 0. And the cosine of 2 pi is 1. So now, if we think about how we can go ahead and sort of make our, again, repeating wave pattern, we'll just kind of start at the top, go down, and then come back up again. Again, because this is a repeating wave pattern, you could continue. So you'd go down, kind of hit that low point before you go back up. And it would be the same thing going the other way. The other side on your x-axis and continuing. Now, remember for your domain, we're looking at all real numbers. And for range, we're looking at -1 to +1. And again, this will change based on your vertical shifts and vertical stretches or shrinks. Now, remember we saw this with our sine graph. So again, kind of same transformations you learned about when we're just looking at functions. And then again, applying those with graphing trig functions. We got our amplitude. Again, remember our period when we are completing one cycle. Our phase shifts, so moving left or right. Our midline, again, is that value that cuts that graph in half horizontally. And of course, remembering the b value needs to be factored out. So let's look at some examples together. So let's figure out each of these characteristics. So looking at our midline, remembering that the midline is always at 0. And right now we're looking at this particular graph that has shifted up 4. Our amplitude again is that a value, the absolute value of that a value. So that's at 2. Our period is always 2 pi over b. So our b value, again, right here, the number in front of x. So 2 pi over 1, which is the same thing as 2 pi. Our phase shifts, we don't have any movement left or right, so we've got none. So we're going to go ahead and graph here. Remember your midline, we would be starting at 0, but because we are shifting up, we're going to be at 4. So your midline is going to be at 4. Now with our amplitude, you would go up 2, which would be that top value of 6, and then the bottom value of 2. Now if we find our period, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks to 2 pi. Half of that is at pi. And we do not have any phase shifts. So thinking back to what a sine function was, we would start at that midline, start at 1, right? Go up, down, and make that sort of S. With cosine graphs, instead of starting at 0, you're actually going to start at 1, come back down, reach the low point before you get back up. Now, that means we're always going to kind of start at the top and then make that curve down before you come back up. So you would have the start not at your midline, right? You're starting at the top, so at 6. The next tick mark would be right at your midline. The following tick mark would be at your low point. The next one would be back up to your midline. And then the 2 pi would be at the top. So we would go up, hit, curve, and then up again. And here is our one period of this function. Okay, going on to the next question. Let's look at, again, what our midline is. Remember, you start at 0, but because we don't have any shifts up or down, right, that midline is going to be right at 0. Our amplitude is the absolute value of a, which is 4. Our period, 2 pi over b. Now our b value is 1, so our period is 2 pi. Our phase shift, so we have a horizontal shift. Remember, inside is opposite, so we are going to the right, and we are going pi over 2. Now, here's the important thing to know. You do have a negative, so what that means is that you are reflecting over the x-axis, so something to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and make our graph here. We are starting our midline at 0, so right along our axes there. You have an amplitude of 4. That means your high point is going to be 4 above and the low point is going to be 4 below. Your period is 2 pi. So 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks is worth 2 pi. Half of that is pi over 2. When you look at your phase shift, you're going to the right pi over 2. So how much is pi over 2? Pi over 2 is actually 1 tick mark. So that means I would go 1 more tick mark to the right. So instead of starting right at that y-axis, you're actually going to shift over 1 tick mark worth. Now, normally with our cosine graphs, we were starting at the top, making our way down before we came back up again. But because you are reflecting, you're actually going to go the other way. You're going to start at the bottom, come back up to your high point, and then back down. So we are going to start at a low point, hit that midline, go to the high point, come back down to your midline, and all the way at the bottom. So we go up, curve, curve, and down. Let's look at these two questions one more time. Now, our positive cosine, you can think about it as a positive CEO, right? If you've got a good CEO, they're always going to start at the top. And if you have a negative CEO, like this one is, they're going to start at the bottom before they go up. So that's one way to think about it. So positive CEO or positive cosine starts at the top, and a negative CEO or negative cosine starts at the bottom. Okay, here is your next example. Again, midline we know is always starting at 0. Here you do have a shift going up 5. Your amplitude, your A value is 3. Our period, 2 pi over b. Here is your b value. So 2 pi over 2, which is the same thing as pi. Your phase shift, here you got a horizontal transformation. We are going to the left pi over 2. All right, so now as we graph, we are going to, again, think about where our midline is. So we start at usually 0, but we're going to go up to 5. Our amplitude means we're going up 3 more, so that's to 8, or down 3 more, which is to 2. Your period is 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks, which is pi, but half of that is pi over 2. Now, something you need to consider is your phase shift. Your phase shift is saying you're going to the left pi over 2. So pi over 2 is 2 tick marks, which means I need to go on the other side of my y-axis, and I'm going to go to the left 2 tick marks. So we have a positive cosine, so that means a positive CEO. They would start at the top, and it would be right at the y-axis. But because we are going to the left, where our phase shift is left pi over 2, that point is now going to be here. And then we would go again. Remember, this is your midline. So we'd go down to that midline, down to our low point, back up, and all the way to the top. So there is your 1 period. Okay, next question is a negative cosine. So we know we are going to reflect over the x-axis. So negative cosine is going to start at the bottom. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Our vertical shift, we are going up 4. Our amplitude is 2. Our period, 2 pi over b, or 2 pi over pi. Those pi's cancel, so our period is 2. We do not have any phase shifts. So now we're going to go ahead and graph. All right, so our midline would be right at 4. The amplitude, so up 2 to 6, down 2 to 2. Our period is 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks. The full period is 2. Half of that is 1. Because we are a negative cosine, we are going to start at the bottom. So we start at the bottommost point, go up to your midline, go up to the top, come back down to the midline, and back down to the bottom point. So up, curve, and down. Okay, here is our last question of writing the equation of this trig graph. You've learned sine, and now you've learned cosine. So there's actually 2 different ways that you can look at this question. Depending on where you start could be the sine, and depending on where you start could also be the cosine. So let's look in both options here. So first let's figure out what our midline is. Our midline, right here where we're starting, right, is the place where it cuts our graph right in half. So this midline is going to be at negative 500. Reminder that your amplitude, right, is the highest point to the midline. So this is my amplitude. And that value from negative 400 to 500, that is 100. So you have your period starting at 0 and going all the way to 1 full cycle. Okay. That value is 160. So if you figure out what our b value is, set 2 pi over b equal to 160. Let's cross multiply. So we got 160b equals 2 pi. If I divide both sides by 160, my b value is going to be 1 over 80. So pi over 80, that's my b value. All right, so now let's just figure out what our sine equation would be. Because again, we started right at the midline. We go up looking like an S. This would be our sine function. So we always put the amplitude first, and that's 100. We have our sine. Okay. We have the b value, which is pi over 80. And then you have your midline, which is the minus 500. Or you can think about what this graph would be like if this was a cosine graph. So remember that cosine graphs don't start at the midline, right? It starts above, so it starts at a high point, right? And it does go down and would curve right up. Now what happened is you actually have a phase shift. So the phase shift would actually have moved that starting point to the right 40. So that's going to be taken into consideration when we write the equation of our cosine graph. So again, amplitude's always going to be in the front. That is 100. You have cosine. Now because you have a phase shift, right, what we're going to do is we're going to put that b value, which is pi over 80, on the outside of the x with the going to the right 40, which is minus 40. And the reason being is you want your equation to be in factored form. So especially when you have a phase shift as well as a b value, you want to make sure that you're always in factored form. So that b is on the outside. And then minus 500. Okay. So again, just remember that you have to be in factored form. All right, guys, I hope this video helped you be able to graph cosine functions a lot better. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future notifications on other pre-calculus videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day.